Imagine this. You wake up in the middle of the night. The room is silent. Outside, the world is asleep. You glance at the clock and see that it's only midnight. Most people today would panic. Why am I awake? Is something wrong with me? But if you had lived hundreds of years ago, you wouldn't be worried at all. In fact, waking up in the middle of the night would have been completely normal. For thousands of years, humans didn't sleep in one long stretch. Instead, they followed a mysterious rhythm that almost nobody remembers today. Historians call it segmented sleep, while people in the past simply called it first sleep and second sleep. This wasn't a strange habit followed by a few villages. It was the normal way of sleeping across Europe, parts of Asia, and many other regions before the modern age. People would go to bed shortly after sunset. They would sleep peacefully for about 4 hours. Then something fascinating happened. Instead of sleeping until morning, they naturally woke up. Not because of noise, not because of stress. Their bodies simply told them it was time to wake. For the next hour or two, families stayed awake. Some prayed quietly, some added wood to the fire. Others talked with their family members, checked on animals, or simply sat under the stars enjoying the peaceful silence of the night. Then, without forcing themselves back to bed, they became sleepy again. They returned to sleep for another 4 hours until sunrise. To them, this wasn't unusual. It was simply how humans slept. So what changed? Why do we now believe that sleeping for 8 uninterrupted hours is the only healthy way? Was humanity doing something wrong for thousands of years? Or have we forgotten a natural rhythm that our ancestors understood far better than we do? To answer these questions, we must travel back to a world without electricity, a world where darkness ruled every evening, and where the night itself shaped the way every human being lived. Because the story of sleep is not just about closing your eyes, it is the story of civilization itself. Have you ever wondered, how do we know that people really slept in 2 separate shifts? The answer is hidden inside old books, forgotten diaries, legal records, and even medieval literature. For centuries, people casually mentioned their first sleep and second sleep as if everyone understood exactly what they meant. They didn't explain the words because they didn't need to. Everyone already knew. A farmer might write that he visited his neighbor after the first sleep. A doctor might recommend taking medicine between the first and second sleep. A priest might encourage people to pray during the quiet hours of the night. These weren't unusual instructions. They were part of everyday life. Back then, darkness arrived soon after sunset. Without electric lights, candles were expensive and oil lamps were precious. Most families couldn't afford to keep their homes brightly lit for long. So, shortly after dusk, they finished dinner, gathered around the fireplace, shared stories, and went to bed. The first sleep usually lasted around 4 hours. Then, naturally, people woke up, but instead of worrying, they embraced the peaceful silence of the night. Some whispered prayers, some reflected on their dreams. Parents checked on sleeping children. Farmers stepped outside to listen for strange sounds around their animals. On clear nights, many simply admired the stars stretching across the dark sky. The world was quiet. There were no smartphones, no glowing screens, no late-night television, no endless notifications demanding attention. For 1 or 2 hours, life slowed down. This quiet period became a moment of reflection that modern life has almost completely erased. Then, as naturally as they had awakened, people felt sleepy again, without forcing themselves, without counting sheep, without worrying about insomnia. They returned to bed for their second sleep, remaining asleep until sunrise. To them, this rhythm felt as normal as breathing. But today, if someone wakes up at midnight, many immediately believe something is wrong. They check the time, they reach for their phone, they begin to worry. Ironically, that anxiety may keep them awake far longer than our ancestors ever stayed awake. So, if this sleeping pattern was so common, why did it disappear? What happened that changed a habit humans had followed for thousands of years? The answer begins with one invention, an invention that transformed not only our nights, but the entire rhythm of human life. For thousands of years, the setting sun decided when the day would end. When darkness covered the land, people naturally slowed down. There was little reason to stay awake. Candles burned quickly, lamp oil was expensive, and working in the dark was difficult. So most families followed the same simple rhythm: sleep soon after sunset, wake for a quiet hour during the night, then return for a second sleep before dawn. This pattern remained surprisingly stable until one revolutionary invention changed everything: artificial light. At first, it came from brighter oil lamps and gas lamps, then came electric bulbs. For the first time in history, humans could turn night into day with the flip of a switch. Cities became brighter, factories stayed open longer, shops extended their business hours, people worked later, socialized later, and eventually went to bed much later than their ancestors ever did. But something else happened at the same time. The human body never changed as quickly as the world around it. Our biological clock had evolved over thousands of years. It responded to sunlight, darkness, and the natural cycle of day and night. Suddenly, bright artificial light began telling the brain that it was still daytime. The body delayed releasing melatonin, the hormone that helps us feel sleepy. People stayed awake longer, yet still had to wake up early for work, school, or other responsibilities. Instead of two peaceful sleep periods, society slowly shifted toward one shorter block of sleep. The Industrial Revolution accelerated this change even further. Factories demanded fixed schedules. Workers couldn't wake naturally in the middle of the night anymore. Every morning began with strict working hours. Sleep became something that had to fit the clock, instead of the clock fitting human biology. Within just a few generations, segmented sleep quietly disappeared. Children grew up believing that sleeping 8 uninterrupted hours was the only normal pattern. The old rhythm slowly faded from memory. Today, very few people have even heard of first sleep and second sleep, yet the evidence remains hidden in old writings, waiting to remind us that human sleep was once very different. But here's the surprising question. If our ancestors naturally woke up in the middle of the night, could some cases of modern insomnia actually be completely normal? The answer may surprise you. For centuries, the idea of sleeping in two separate phases sounded like nothing more than an old tradition. But in the 1990s, scientists decided to ask a fascinating question. What if modern humans were allowed to sleep the way nature intended? To find out, researchers placed volunteers in an unusual environment. There were no smartphones, no television, no bright electric lights, only long periods of darkness, similar to what our ancestors experienced before electricity. At first, the volunteers slept just as most people do today, one long block of sleep. But after several weeks, something remarkable happened. Without anyone telling them what to do, their bodies began to change. Many participants naturally drifted into two distinct periods of sleep. They slept for several hours, woke up calmly in the middle of the night, remained peacefully awake for about an hour, then fell asleep again until morning. The researchers hadn't instructed them to follow this pattern. Their bodies simply returned to it on their own. Even more interesting, the volunteers didn't describe this quiet period as stressful. Instead, many said they felt deeply relaxed, Some reflected on their thoughts, some enjoyed the silence, others simply rested without feeling any pressure to fall asleep immediately. This is very different from what many people experience today. Imagine waking up at 2 a.m. instead of thinking, maybe this is a natural part of human sleep. Many people immediately think, something is wrong with me. That anxiety raises stress levels. The mind becomes more alert, and falling asleep becomes even harder. Ironically, the fear of being awake may create the very insomnia people are trying to escape. Of course, this doesn't mean everyone should intentionally split their sleep into two parts. Modern life is different. Most people have fixed work schedules, school routines, and family responsibilities. Doctors generally recommend getting enough total sleep that fits your lifestyle and health needs. But these discoveries remind us of something important. The human brain still carries traces of ancient habits, even if the modern world no longer allows us to follow them. Perhaps waking briefly during the night isn't always a sign that something is broken. Perhaps it's a quiet echo from a time when humanity lived by the rhythm of the stars instead of the glow of electric lights. Imagine standing outside on a quiet night. No street lights, no traffic, no glowing phone screens, only the stars above you and the gentle sound of nature all around. For most of human history, this was the world our ancestors knew. Their days followed the rising sun, their nights belonged to darkness, and their sleep followed a rhythm that felt completely natural. Today, our world is very different. Artificial light surrounds us almost every hour of the day. We work late, we scroll through social media before bed, we answer emails after sunset. Even while lying in bed, many of us continue staring at bright screens. Without realizing it, we've created a lifestyle unlike anything humans experience for thousands of years. This doesn't mean modern life is wrong. Electricity has made life safer, healthier, and far more connected. But it also reminds us that our bodies are still shaped by an ancient past. The next time you wake briefly during the night, don't panic immediately. A short awakening isn't always a sign that something is seriously wrong. Many sleep specialists note that brief awakenings can be a normal part of sleep, especially if you can relax and drift back to sleep naturally. The important thing is the overall quality and total amount of sleep, not whether you remain unconscious every second of the night. Perhaps our ancestors understood something we've forgotten. Instead of fighting every moment of wakefulness, they accepted it. They used those quiet hours to reflect, to pray, to think, or simply to enjoy the peaceful silence before returning to sleep. Maybe the greatest lesson isn't that we should copy every habit from the past. After all, modern life has different demands. Instead, the lesson is that understanding history can change the way we understand ourselves. Sometimes the answers to modern questions are hidden in ancient traditions. The story of human sleep reminds us that history isn't only about kings, wars, or great civilizations. It's also about ordinary people, the way they lived, the way they worked, and even the way they slept beneath the stars. So tonight, if you wake for a few quiet moments, remember that you may be experiencing something your ancestors considered perfectly ordinary, a forgotten rhythm, still quietly echoing through the human mind. Because history never truly disappears, sometimes it simply falls asleep. If you enjoyed discovering this forgotten chapter of human history, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more fascinating stories from the ancient world. And here's a question for you. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night for no apparent reason? Let us know in the comments. You might be surprised to learn you're not alone.